Welcome to my Chanel Most Worth Coins WC. Today videos is one you won't to miss. We're diving into the world of top 6 quarter-dollar coins. So let's get it started. The 1965 United States quarter dollar is one of the most historically significant coins of the 20th century, not because of a new design or a rare variety, but because it represents a monumental shift in American coinage. The 1965 quarter marks the beginning of the end for silver circulating coins and the transition to the copper-nickel-clad composition that remains the standard today. To fully appreciate the 1965 quarter, one must understand the economic pressures of the time, the changes in minting practices, the design features, and the coin's place in the broader story of American money. Historical context. By the early 1960s, the United States was facing a severe coin shortage. Economic growth and the demands of a booming post-war economy created an unprecedented need for coins. Meanwhile, the price of silver was steadily rising. As silver prices approached and eventually exceeded the intrinsic value of coins, it became profitable for people to hoard silver quarters, half dollars, and dimes, effectively pulling them out of circulation. The U.S. Mint struggled to keep up with the demand for coins, and by 1964, the situation had become critical. President Lyndon B. Johnson and Congress acted quickly, passing the Coinage Act of 1965, which authorized significant changes to U.S. coinage. For the first time since the 19th century, quarters and dimes would no longer be made of silver. Instead, they would be struck with a sandwich of copper and nickel. Half dollars would retain some silver, but in reduced content. Thus, the 1965 quarter is the first mass-produced U.S. quarter to be made without any silver content, a groundbreaking moment in American numismatic history. Composition and physical characteristics. The 1965 quarter introduced the new clad composition, outer layers, 75% copper and 25% nickel core, 100% copper. This clad structure resulted in a coin that maintained the familiar silver-colored appearance but contained no precious metal. The new quarter had a total weight of 5.67 grams, slightly lighter than the earlier 90% silver quarters, which weighed 6.25 grams. The diameter remained unchanged at 24.3 millimeters, and the edge continued to feature the traditional reeded, grooved edge. However, because of the copper core, if one looks closely at the edge of a clad quarter, they can often see a thin copper band sandwiched between the nickel-colored outer layers, something that was not visible on earlier silver coins. Design. Details. The design of the 1965 quarter remained the same as it had since 1932. Obverse, front. A portrait of George Washington facing left, designed by sculptor John Flanagan. Above Washington's head is the word Liberty, while to the eye, left side appears In God We Trust. The date 1965 is centered beneath his bust. Reverse, back. Features a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows, with 2 olive branches beneath symbolizing the nation's commitment to peace but readiness for war. Surrounding the eagle are the United States of America, a pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, and quarter dollar. Importantly, the overall appearance of the 1965 quarter did not change to signal the end of silver content, a deliberate choice to prevent public alarm and hoarding. Many people at the time were unaware that the coins they were receiving had lost their silver value. No mint mark. One key detail about the 1965 quarter is that it bears no mint mark, regardless of where it was struck. This was part of a broader policy in effect from 1965 to 1967 to discourage hoarding and speculative collecting during the coin shortage. The U.S. Mint suspended the use of mint marks during these years to make it less obvious where the coins were produced. Thus, all 1965 quarters appear without a D for Denver or S for San Francisco. Even though millions of 1965 quarters were minted at various locations, it is impossible to tell where an individual coin was produced without mint marks. Mintage and production. The U.S. Mint produced an extraordinary number of 1965 quarters to help alleviate the coin shortage. The total mintage is staggering. Over 1.8 billion 1965 quarters were struck. This massive production volume makes the 1965 quarter one of the most common dates in the entire Washington quarter series. It also means that circulated examples are plentiful even today. Interestingly, because of the chaotic nature of the minting process at the time, a few leftover 1964 silver planchets were occasionally struck with 1965 dated dies. This resulted in a very small number of 1965 silver quarters, an incredibly rare and highly prized mint error. Rare 1965 silver quarter error. One of the great rarities associated with the 1965 quarter is the off-metal error where a few quarters, intended to be struck in copper-nickel, were instead accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. These 1965 silver quarters are extremely valuable. A genuine 1965 silver quarter will weigh about 6.25 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams for a clad quarter. Professional authentication and grading are essential, as the difference between clad and silver can be difficult for the untrained eye to distinguish by appearance alone. 65 silver quarter examples have sold for thousands of dollars at auction. Thus, every 1965 quarter is potentially worth checking carefully. Value and collectability for ordinary copper-nickel. 1965 quarters. Circulated examples are typically worth only their face value, 25 cents. Uncirculated, mint state examples can fetch $1 to $5 depending on condition. Gem mint state. 65 MS65 examples might be worth $20 to $50, with MS67 or higher examples commanding much more, sometimes $500 or more at auctions due to their rarity in such pristine condition. Coins with strong original luster, minimal bag marks, and sharp strikes are much more desirable to collectors. Many 1965 quarters exhibit weak strikes, soft details, and rough surfaces because of the high-speed production methods used to meet demand. Proof coins were not officially made for general circulation in 1965. Special mint sets, SMS, were issued instead. The 1965 special mint set quarter is sharper and more reflective than a regular business strike, but lacks the mirror-like surfaces of a traditional proof. SMS quarters are widely available and typically worth $2 to $10. Depending on quality, high-end SMS coins with deep, proof-like mirrors and cameo contrast are highly collectible and can fetch significant premiums. Special mint set, SMS, 1965. Quarter because the mint did not produce traditional proof. Sets in 1965, it created special mint sets, SMS, to satisfy collectors. These coins were struck more carefully than normal business strikes, but were not polished to foolproof standards. SMS coins can be identified by their sharp details and a semi-proof-like surface. Some SMS quarters show a strong cameo contrast between frosted devices and mirrored fields, and these are quite popular among collectors. An SMS 1965 quarter-graded SP67 Cameo or SP68 Deep Cameo can command very high prices. Cultural context of 1965 beyond numismatics. 1965 was a year of tremendous change in the United States. It was the height of the Civil Rights Movement, marked by the passage of the Voting Rights Act. The Vietnam War escalated, and the countercultural revolution began gathering momentum. Technology, culture, and politics were all in flux. Thus, the 1965 quarter is more than just a piece of currency. It is a tangible artifact from one of the most dynamic periods in modern American history. The 1965 United States quarter. Dollar is one of the most important coins of the 20th century, not for its rarity but for what it represents. A profound economic and technological shift in American money. It ushered in the era of clad coinage, changing the very substance of everyday commerce. Despite its commonness today, the 1965 quarter remains a cornerstone of modern numismatics. Whether found in a handful of change, kept as part of a collection, or examined for rare errors like the silver plancher strikes, the 1965 quarter continues to fascinate and educate collectors and historians alike. A small yet significant piece of America's evolving story. The 1969 United States quarter dollar, part of the Washington Quarter series, holds a special place in American numismatic history. This coin represents not just a continuation of a beloved design, but also reflects a significant transitional period in American coinage and society at large. Understanding the 1969 quarter requires examining its historical background, design details, minting process, and its place within the broader numismatic landscape. Historical background. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Initially intended as a one-year commemorative issue, it quickly became a permanent fixture in U.S. coinage due to its immense popularity. By the late 1960s, the Washington quarter had seen a few important changes, especially relating to its composition. The most notable change occurred in 1965, when the U.S. Mint transitioned from 90% silver coinage to a clad composition of copper and nickel due to rising silver prices and a widespread coin shortage. Thus, the 1969 quarter is part of the early group of post-silver-clad Washington quarters. Unlike its earlier silver predecessors, the 1969 quarter consists of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a core of pure copper, giving it a total weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. Design details. The obverse, front, of the 1969 quarter features the familiar and iconic portrait of George Washington, designed by sculptor John Flanagan. The bust of Washington faces left, and above his head is the word Liberty. The phrase, "In God We Trust," appears to the left of his neck, and the year 1969 is centered below the portrait. Despite its decades-long use, Flanagan's design in 1969 remained mostly unchanged from its original 1932 version, although the quality of striking and some minor adjustments in details varied over the years. Collectors often notice that quarters from this era may show softer details on Washington's hair and the eagle on the reverse due to worn dies or high-speed production. The reverse, back, of the 1969 quarter depicts a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings clutching a bundle of arrows, symbolizing preparedness for war, with two olive branches beneath it, representing a desire for peace. The United States of America and E pluribus unum, out of many, one, appear above the eagle, and quarter dollar is at the bottom. Mint marks and production. The 1969 quarter was minted at 3 facilities. Philadelphia Mint, now Mint mark. Denver Mint, Mint mark D. San Francisco Mint, Mint mark S. For proof coins, the Philadelphia quarters have no mint mark, as was standard practice at the time. The Denver quarters bear a small D located on the obverse, just to the right of the ribbon on Washington's ponytail. Proof coins, specially struck for collectors with sharper details and mirror-like fields, were produced at the San Francisco Mint and bear an S mint mark. Here are the approximate mintage figures. Philadelphia, 176 Axon 2 12,000 coins. Denver, 114 372,000 coins. San Francisco proofs, 2,134,631 coins. These numbers show that 1969 quarters are generally not rare, but coins in high uncirculated grades, MS-65 and above, or deep cameo proofs can carry a significant premium among collectors. Collectability and value in circulated condition. 1969 quarters are quite common and typically worth their face. Value of 25 cents. However, in mint state, MS grades, especially MS-66 or higher, their value increases due to the difficulty of finding well-struck examples without contact marks. An MS-65 graded 1969 D quarter might be worth $10–20, while MS-67 examples can command several $100s at auction, particularly for the Denver issues. Proof versions from San Francisco are more plentiful, but are collected for their beautiful strikes and finishes. Deep Cameo, DCAM, Proof 1969 S quarters, displaying frosted designs with mirror-like fields, are highly sought after and can be valued significantly higher depending on condition. One important numismatic note: unlike the 1969 Lincoln cent, which has a famous 1969 S doubled die obverse error, no major widespread doubled die varieties or minting errors are known for the 1969 quarter. However, minor die varieties, repunched mint marks, RPMs, and other small errors can still add interest for specialists. Cultural context of 1969. The year 1969 was one of the most tumultuous and memorable years in American history. It saw the Apollo 11 moon landing, the ongoing Vietnam War, the Woodstock Music Festival, and significant social and political upheavals. Coins minted during this year, therefore, carry an additional layer of historical significance. Holding a 1969 quarter is like holding a small piece of that transformative era, making it attractive not just to numismatists, but also to history enthusiasts. Authentication and tips for collectors. As with any collectible coin, proper authentication is important, especially for high-grade or proof examples. Grading services like PCGS and NGC can certify and grade coins, providing assurance of authenticity and condition. For those new to collecting, it's recommended to look for coins with sharp details on Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers, minimal bag marks, and original luster. When purchasing proof coins, check for clarity, depth of cameo contrast, and absence of haze or toning. 1969 S proof quarters with deep cameo contrast are particularly striking and stand out in any collection. Conclusion: the 1969 United States quarter dollar might at first seem like a common everyday coin, and indeed millions were minted, but it represents much more than its face value. It is a piece of the nation's artistic heritage through the enduring image of George Washington, a symbol of the mint's adaptation to economic changes through the shift to clad coinage, and a snapshot of an America in the midst of profound societal transformation. Whether found in pocket change, collected in high grades, or preserved in proof sets, the 1969 quarter remains a humble yet historically rich artifact of mid-20th century America. The 1994 United States quarter dollar is part of the long-running Washington Quarter series, a coin that has been a staple of American coinage for over 6 decades by that point. Although the 1994 quarter might seem like just another modern coin, it actually sits at an interesting crossroads in numismatic history. It represents the final years of the traditional Washington quarter before the monumental shift that would occur just a few years later with the launch of the 50-state quarters. Program. In examining the 1994 quarter, it is important to understand its historical context. Detailed design, mintage figures, variations, and collector significance. Historical context. The Washington quarter had been in continuous production since 1932, originally struck to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. John Flanagan's portrait of Washington had become iconic by the 1990s, even though it had seen slight modifications over the decades to adjust for modern minting techniques. The early 1990s in America were marked by a relatively strong economy, the end of the Cold War, and rapid technological innovation. However, the coinage system remained relatively stable. The Washington quarter still reigned supreme on the 25-cent piece, but changes were brewing. Public interest in coins was about to explode with the upcoming state quarters program, announced later in the decade. Thus, the 1994 quarter belongs. to the last generation of the classic Washington quarters, minted before that major national commemorative effort began. Design details the obverse front of the 1994 quarter continues to feature John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington. Washington is shown in a left-facing bust, with his hair tied back in a simple ribbon. Above Washington's head is the word Liberty, while the motto, "In God We Trust," appears to the left, and the date 1994 is centered below the bust. Importantly, in the 1990s, the Mint worked to sharpen the designs of many circulating coins, but heavy circulation wear meant that many 1994 quarters would eventually show significant flattening of Washington's hair details and facial features. The reverse, back of the coin continues the traditional design used since 1932. A heraldic eagle with outspread wings perched atop a bundle of arrows, with two olive branches positioned below it symbolizing peace. Above the eagle, arching across the top, is the United States of America, with the motto, E pluribus unum, out of ve, many one, directly below it. The words quarter dollar curve along the bottom edge of the coin. The edge of the coin is reeded, with a series of tiny vertical grooves, a design feature originally intended centuries ago to deter coin shaving and other fraudulent practices. Composition and physical characteristics. Since the coinage reforms of 1965, Washington quarters had been struck in a clad composition instead of silver. The 1994 quarter is no exception. It is made of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The specifications are weight, 5.67 grams diameter, 24.26 millimeters. Thickness, 1.75 millimeters, edge, reeded. This copper-nickel-clad composition gives the quarter its distinctive silvery appearance while being much less expensive to produce than the 90% silver coins of earlier decades. Mint marks and production in 1994. The U.S. Mint produced quarters at 3 locations: Philadelphia Mint, Mint Mark P, Denver Mint, Mint Mark D, San Francisco Mint, Mint Mark S. For proof coins only, the mint mark appears on the obverse side of the coin, to the A, right of the ribbon in Washington's hair. Here are the approximate mintage figures. Philadelphia, P, 825,600,000 coins. Denver, D, 880,034,000 coins. San Francisco, S, proof, clad, 2,484,594 coins. San Francisco, S, proof, silver, 785,329 coins. Noticeably, the Denver Mint struck slightly more quarters than Philadelphia in 1994. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint produced both regular proof coins, copper-nickel clad, and special 90% silver proof quarters for collectors. The sheer volume of 1994 quarters means they are very common in circulation even today, though finding uncirculated examples becomes more challenging with every passing year. Proof. Coins proof quarters made in San Francisco are of a much higher quality than business. Strike coins. These coins were struck multiple times using specially prepared dies and polished planchets, coin blanks, to produce sharp details and a mirrored background. Clad proofs. Normal copper-nickel composition with brilliant surfaces. Silver proofs, made from 90% silver and 10% copper, weighing slightly more at 6.25 grams compared to regular quarters. Proof coins were typically sold as part of U.S. Mint proof sets or silver proof sets. Errors and varieties. While no famous national varieties exist for the 1994 quarter, such as double dies, collectors do search for minor errors like off-center, strikes-clipped planchets, die cracks, weak strikes, struck through debris. These error coins are scarce and usually command premiums depending on the severity. and visibility of the error. Additionally, some collectors look for quarters that show strong, full details, such as full talon strikes, where the eagle's claws and arrows are sharply defined. Collector interest and value in general, 1994 quarters in circulated condition are still worth only their face value, 25 cents. However, higher-end examples in mint state 65, MS 65, or better condition can be valued anywhere from $5 to $20, depending on quality and grading certification. Certified MS 67 examples, which are rare and extremely well struck with minimal marks, can fetch $100 or more at auction. Proof coins also have modest collector value. 1994 S clad proof. Quarter, typically worth about $5, $10. 1994 S silver proof. Quarter, worth about $10, $20 depending on the silver market and the coin's condition. Deep cameo, DCAM proof coins, which have frosted designs and deeply mirrored fields, are especially prized and can command higher premiums. Significance today. While the 1994 quarter is not particularly rare, it occupies an important spot in numismatic history. It represents the end of an era, the last full decade of the classic Washington quarter before the redesign and commemorative explosion with the 1999-2008 50-state quarters program. Collectors seeking to build date and mint mark sets often include high-grade 1994P and 1994D quarters in their albums. Proof set collectors also look for 1994 S-clad and silver versions to complete their 1990s collections. Conclusion. The 1994 United States quarter dollar may seem like an ordinary coin, but it captures a snapshot of America during a time of relative stability before the major transformations of the late 1990s. From a design that had proudly served for over 6 decades to a production method reflecting advancements in modern minting, the 1994 quarter is a classic piece of American pocket change with a lasting legacy. Whether found in circulation, set aside in pristine rolls, or gleaming in proof sets, the 1994 quarter continues to tell the enduring story of George Washington, American ideals, and the art of modern coinage. The 1993 United States quarter dollar stands as a representative example of late 20th century American coinage. While it may not seem particularly special at first glance, the 1993 quarter actually occupies an interesting position within numismatic history. It comes from a period just before the major changes that would soon revolutionize the Washington quarter series, namely the introduction of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. As such, the 1993 quarter is among the final issues of the traditional classic-style Washington quarter that had been produced largely unchanged for over 60 years. Examining the 1993 quarter in full detail offers a window into the artistry, economics, and production practices of U.S. coins during this transitional era. Historical context. First minted in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the Washington quarter quickly became a permanent fixture of American currency. Designed by John Flanagan, the Washington quarter was originally struck in 90% silver until the Coinage Act of 1965, which shifted the composition to a copper-nickel clad due to rising silver prices. By 1993, the Washington quarter had been a familiar sight in Americans' hands and pockets for over 6 decades. The early 1990s were a relatively stable time economically and politically. The Cold War had ended. The United States was adjusting to its role as the world's sole superpower, and domestically, there was a focus on economic growth and technological innovation. In coinage, however, there was a growing recognition that American money had remained visually static for too long. Discussions were underway that would ultimately lead to the 50-state quarters program later in the decade. But in 1993, the Washington quarter continued its classic form, proudly carrying forward a design rooted in tradition. Design details. The obverse, front, of the 1993 quarter features the enduring bust of George Washington as designed by John Flanagan. Washington faces left, wearing his hair tied back in a queue in a style common among 18th century gentlemen. Above Washington's head is the word Liberty in bold letters, while the national motto "In God We Trust" is displayed to the left of his neck. The mint mark, if present, appears just to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair. The year 1993 is placed prominently at the bottom. The reverse, back of the coin continues the classic design introduced in 1932, a heraldic eagle, with wings outstretched, perched atop a bundle of arrows symbolizing military readiness. Below the arrows are two olive branches, representing peace. The United States of America arches across the top of the coin, while a pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, is located directly above the eagle's head. At the bottom, in bold letters, is the denomination $quarter. The design of the 1993 quarter maintained the simplicity and dignity of the original, although slight changes over the years to die production methods had softened some of the finer details compared to earlier strikes. Composition and physical. Characteristic since the end of silver coinage in 1965, standard-issue Washington quarters, like the 1993 quarter, have been composed of a copper-nickel-clad sandwich. Outer layers, 75% copper and 25% nickel core, 100% copper. This gives the quarter a silver-white color on the outside while maintaining a reddish copper color visible at the coin's edge. Specifications. Weight, 5.67 grams diameter, 24.26 millimeters. Thickness, 1.75 millimeters edge. Reeded, with vertical grooves, the copper core and nickel cladding made the coins both durable and resistant to tarnishing, ideal qualities for a circulating coin. Mint marks and production in 1993. The Washington quarter was struck at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, P. Denver, D. San Francisco, S. Proof coins only. The mint mark, P, D, or S, is located on the obverse, just to the right of the ribbon tying Washington's hair. Mintage figures, Philadelphia, P, 639,276. 0 coins Denver, D, 645,476,000 coins San Francisco, S, proof, clad, 2,633,439 coins San Francisco, S, proof, silver, 761,353 coins. The combined production of regular strike coins from Philadelphia and Denver in 1993 exceeded 1.28 billion quarters, making circulated 1993 quarters common even today. The San Francisco Mint produced high-quality proof coins, both clad and silver, for collectors, sold in special proof sets. Proof coins differ dramatically from business strikes in appearance and production. They are struck multiple times with specially polished dies and prepared planchets, creating coins with highly detailed, mirror-like fields and frosted devices. Clad proofs, S, made with the regular copper-nickel-clad composition. Silver proofs, S, struck from 90% silver and 10% copper, similar to pre-1965 quarters. Silver proof coins are slightly heavier at 6.25 grams compared to the regular 5.67 grams for clad coins. Proof coins from 1993 are highly collectible, especially those that exhibit deep cameo, D-cam contrast, where the devices, Washington's portrait and the eagle, are frosted and the fields are deeply mirrored. Errors and varieties. The 1993 quarter series is not known for major varieties like doubled dies or overstrikes, but minor mint errors can and do occur, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks or die breaks struck through debris errors. While these errors are relatively uncommon, they are sought after by collectors and can command significant premiums depending on their severity and eye appeal. Additionally, collectors search for well-struck, high-grade examples, coins with full, Clear detail on Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. As many business strike coins show weaker strikes due to high-speed production. Collector interest and value in circulated condition, the 1993 quarter remains worth face value, 25 cents, because of its high mintage and common availability. However, uncirculated examples are far more valuable, particularly in high mint state grades, MS63 to MS64, worth about $1 to $3 MS65, Gem BU, typically worth $5 to $10 MS67 or better. These are relatively rare and can fetch $50 to $150 or more at auctions, depending on eye appeal and certification by services like PCGS or NGC. Proof coins command higher values. 1993 S clad proof, worth about $5, 10. 1993 S silver proof, worth about $10, $20, depending on silver prices and coin condition. Deep cameo, DCAM. Proofs, highly desirable, often doubling the standard proof price. Because of the sheer number of coins minted, finding an attractive high-grade 1993 quarter is not especially difficult. But finding truly exceptional examples with perfect surfaces is much rarer and highly prized by registry set collectors. Cultural and numismatic significance, although it is often overshadowed by the flashier statehood quarters that began. Just a few years later, the 1993 quarter represents the final steady years of the classic Washington quarter series. It belongs to a generation of coins that, while familiar and everyday, quietly laid the groundwork for the massive numismatic renaissance of the late 1990s and early 2000s, when millions of Americans were reintroduced to coin collecting through the 50-state quarters program. The 1993 quarter, in its simplicity, connects Americans to their numismatic traditions and to the legacy of George Washington as a symbol of national unity. Conclusion. The 1993 United States quarter dollar may seem ordinary, but it is a symbol of a bygone era, one of stability, tradition, and quiet dignity in American coinage. With its classic design, durable composition, and massive production, it is a coin that served millions of people in their everyday lives. While most circulated examples hold only face value, the 1993 quarter remains important to collectors interested in modern U.S. coins, registry sets, and high-grade specimens. Whether tucked away in a change jar or displayed proudly in a collection, the 1993 quarter is a reminder of America's enduring connection to its founding principles and numismatic heritage. The 1984 United States quarter dollar continues the long-standing tradition of the Washington quarter, a coin that by 1984 had already been circulating in American pockets and purses for over 50 years. Although the 1984 quarter might seem at first like an ordinary piece of everyday currency, a closer examination reveals much about the history of U.S. coinage, minting practices of the era, and the subtle but significant changes that kept American coinage evolving during the late 20th century. Historical context. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Sculptor John Flanagan designed the original bust of Washington, which would remain largely unchanged for decades, including in 1984. By the 1980s, the United States was going through important economic, cultural, and political changes. The nation was in the middle of the Reagan administration, experiencing economic recovery after a period of high inflation and recession. During this time, the U.S. Mint focused on efficiency and mass production, supplying billions of coins for a growing, busy economy. Coin collecting was also becoming increasingly popular in the 1980s. However, no major new quarter designs had been introduced yet, so the coins of 1984 remained familiar to Americans. It wasn't until the late 1990s that coin design would undergo significant changes with the 50-state quarters program. Composition and physical features. Since the Coinage Act of 1965, the Washington quarter had been minted using a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than the traditional 90% silver. This was due to rising silver prices in the early 1960s, making it impractical for circulating coinage to continue using precious metals. The 1984 quarter is composed of outer layers, 75% copper and 25% nickel core. 100% copper specifications. Weight, 5.67 grams. Diameter, 24-26 millimeters. Thickness, 1.75 millimeters. Edge, reeded, 119 reeds. The copper core is visible when you look at the coin's edge. You'll notice a faint copper band sandwiched between the silvery nickel outer layers. This sandwich structure provided the durability needed for coins to endure decades of circulation. Design details, obverse, front. The obverse of the 1984 quarter features a left-facing bust of George Washington, the first president of the United States, designed by John Flanagan. His expression is calm, dignified, and resolute, fitting for the father of the country. At the top of the coin is the word liberty. To the left of Washington's portrait is the national motto, "In God We Trust." The year 1984 is inscribed beneath Washington's image. The mint mark, either P, D, or S, appears just to the right of Washington's ponytail, near the neck truncation. Philadelphia coins have a P, Denver coins a D, and San Francisco proof coins an S reverse, back. The reverse features a heraldic eagle, another enduring American symbol. The eagle stands proudly with wings spread wide. The eagle is perched on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing military strength and readiness to defend the nation. Beneath the eagle are two olive branches, symbolizing the United States' desire for peace. Above the eagle, following the curve of the rim, are the words, United States of America. Directly above the eagle's head is the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. At the bottom of the coin, under the olive branches, is the denomination $quarter. Both sides of the coin remain faithful to the original artistry of Flanagan's 1932 design, though by 1984, minor die polishing, wear, and updates over the years had slightly changed the look compared to earlier versions. Mint marks and mintage in 1984. The quarter was produced at 3 mints: Philadelphia Mint, P. Denver Mint, D. San Francisco Mint, S. Proof coins only. Mintage numbers: Philadelphia, P. 676,545,000 coins, Denver, D. 464,064 coins, San Francisco, S. Proofs: 3,065,110 coins. These numbers indicate that the 1984 quarter was produced in very large quantities, making it a common coin today, especially in circulated condition. The proof coins struck in San Francisco were sold as part of special collector sets and exhibit mirror-like fields and frosted details. Proofs were not intended for circulation. Special characteristics and strike. Quality: by the mid-1980s, the mint was operating at extremely high production speeds, aiming to churn out vast quantities of coins for a growing economy. As a result, many 1984 quarters, especially from Philadelphia, display weak strikes, particularly around the hair details and eagle feathers. Bag marks and minor surface abrasions are common even on uncirculated examples. Well struck. High-grade coins are relatively harder to find and command a premium. Proof coins from San Francisco generally have sharp detail and high contrast, but finding an example with a flawless, deep cameo, frosted devices, and mirrored fields can still be challenging. Error coins and varieties. The 1984 quarter doesn't have any nationally famous. Widespread varieties like doubled dies, such as the famous 1955 Lincoln cent. But there are occasional minor errors that interest collectors, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and die breaks struck through debris. Errors: weak strikes and filled die errors, where parts of the design are missing due to grease-filled dies. Collectors who enjoy error coins often look for dramatic off-center strikes or full clips where a chunk of the coin is visibly missing. Collector. Interest and value. Because the 1984 quarter was produced in such large numbers and lacks any major rarities, circulated examples generally have no numismatic premium and are worth just their face value, 25 cents. However, uncirculated and high-grade examples, especially those graded MS66 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, can be more valuable. MS63 to MS65 typically sell for $1 to $5. MS66 can fetch $10 to $25, MS67 or higher. Much rarer. Coins in this grade can bring $100 to $300 or even more depending on eye appeal and scarcity at that grade level. For proof coins, standard 1984S clad proof quarters are valued around $3 to $6 depending on condition. Deep cameo, DCM. Proofs are more desirable, often worth $10 to $20 or more if certified in PR69 DCAM or PR70 DCAM condition. Fun fact: pre-state quarter era. The 1984 quarter comes from the pre-state quarter era, before the U.S. Mint began dramatically changing designs with the 50 state quarters program that launched in 1999. Back in 1984, Americans were used to seeing the same coins year after year. While this made coin designs familiar and dependable, it also led to a feeling of monotony, and it's part of what later inspired the government to launch new designs to engage the public. Today, finding a high-grade original 1984 quarter offers a glimpse into a time when stability and tradition were the dominant themes in U.S. coinage. Conclusion. The 1984 United States quarter dollar is a classic, time-honored coin that represents the last decades of the original Washington quarter era before the dramatic design changes of the 21st century. Although common in circulated grades, the coin holds historical interest as a tangible reminder of Reagan-era America, the evolution of the U.S. Mint's technology, and the enduring legacy of George Washington as a symbol of national unity. Whether discovered in spare change, carefully preserved in a coin album, or sought after in high mint state grades, the 1984 quarter continues to connect collectors and everyday Americans to the larger story of their nation's money and history. Would you also like me to create a collector's checklist or a price chart for different grades of 1984 quarters, like MS65, MS67, Proof 69, etc.? It would make your article, video, or post even more professional and detailed.